Welcome to the Vault Podcast, classic music reviews, presented by IV Creative. Now, here's your hosts, B. Cox and the crew.
Greetings and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Vault Podcast, classic music reviews, presented by IV Creative. It's a perspective of the classics from a fresh point of view. We appreciate you for taking your time and lending your ears to our perspective. You could be anywhere listening to anything, but you're right here with us, so we thank you. With you today is yours truly, B. Cox, and with me, I have the crew, comprised of these fine gentlemen around me. To my left, we have my boy Dominique, aka Cousin Damo. He is the host of the Raw Sex Podcast. You can hear it on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. You can also catch that usually on Wednesday nights when they release the Raw Sex Podcast. That's with himself and Tony Wolf, and of course, yours truly. To my right, we have my boy DT Dave. He is the host of the Ground Rule Double Podcast on Facebook Live. You can catch him on most Fridays and Monday evenings, usually somewhere around 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern. Just make sure you check. And now there is a new Facebook page for the Ground Rule Double Podcast. Make sure you go check it out on Facebook and also make sure you like the page as well. And in front of me to my 12 o'clock, we have my boy J.O. He is a hip-hop connoisseur from everything from East Coast, West Coast, down south, and everything in between. Gentlemen, always like to thank you for coming through to share your perspective with us. And as always, on the Vault Podcast, we take you back in time to review the classics. We review albums that are at their 20, 25, and 30th anniversary after their releases to see if they still stand the test of time. And today, we have a classic, a landmark album in hip-hop history, released by none other than herself, the Queen Latifah, with All Hail the Queen, released 30 years ago. All Hail the Queen released on November 28th, 1989, under Tommy Boy Records, one of her two albums released on Tommy Boy Records. It was her debut album, peaked at number 6 on the Billboard charts. This was, of course, her landmark debut album, had its famous single with, of course, Moni Love, called Ladies First. Some of the things and the accolades this album had: it was selected as one of the Source's 100 Best Rap Albums. Also was featured on Robert Dimery's 1001 Albums You Must Hear Before You Die. And in 2008, the single Ladies First was ranked number 35 on VH1's 100 Greatest Songs of Hip Hop. So November 28th, 1989, for All Hail the Queen. Producers on this album, the majority of the work done by DJ Mark, the 45 King. Also work by Louis Vega and also KRS-One, Daddy-O, and Prince Paul. A lot of work here done by DJ Mark, the 45 King, on this album. Initial track listing of 12 tracks. On the CD version, there's 3 bonus tracks of 3 remixes for Dance With Me, Wrath of the Madness, Princess of the Posse. So a very short and truncated track listing that we have for this album, but 12 tracks here, of course, of a pretty solid album in my respect, even after 30 years ago. I kind of feel like sometimes when you deal with a lot of those mid to late 80s albums, that some of them, to me, I feel as though don't age as well. We dealt with this a little while ago when we listened to De La Soul's 3 Feet High and Rising. While that does have some cultural significance and it is important in hip-hop history, the majority of us, I feel as though it didn't age as well as we thought it would 30 years afterwards. It's still an important album, but didn't age as well. So with this, the All Hail the Queen with Queen Latifah, this is her debut album. When you talk about Queen Latifah, you know her work, and it's not just as an artist, but also as a producer. She started her entertainment group, which included a record label and also a film production company, Flavor Unit, which she started with her cousin Shakim Comprare. Also star of the 90s classic sitcom Living Single, plenty of movies and also other shows as well, and also a Broadway star and also star of many series. She has done many things throughout her career and has served her well as a pioneer, really, in hip-hop as a female MC, fellas. So we'll get into this album now and start to think about some of the things and what you all thought about listening to it and what you thought about All Hail the Queen. So I'll go ahead and I'll actually start with Damo and get your reaction of listening to the album, what you thought about it upon first listening to it now, what you think about it, and your takeaways from it after listening to it this week.
Well, actually, I never heard it before this week. You know, 89, I'm a baby, C Pleasant Elementary, so of course I ain't listening to the Queen. I knew Ladies First because my mother always played it and jam to it in the house. Old school word, jam. But I listened to it this week, and I was like, I told him, I said I came in thinking it was gonna be classic for its time. I listened to it all the way through. I was like, okay, you got me. I see why you a classic album on a number 35 song on there. I can see it. It's a good album to me.
Jay, your reactions, your initial reaction upon listening to it, and then upon reviewing it after all these years, what you thought upon listening to it this week.
Okay, so I mean, 89. I wouldn't say I was a baby, but I was like what, third grade or something like that. So
just learning cursive,
right? So I mean, of course, like I heard the song "Ladies First" and knew she had done stuff like Native Tongues and everything like that, but it really wasn't in the mind frame to really grasp the concept. I was starting to understand like black empowerment and everything like that, but still was kind of a baby in that mind frame. But had to go back and listen to it recently, and it just makes me appreciate it much more as far as the subject matter she's talking about, and the fact like where she was as a female MC. Not even so much compared to now, but like even throughout the 90s. I mean, when it was kind of like few and far between with female MCs, and even with those, they kind of were compromising their their integrity as far as like getting on and having record sales and fame and everything like that. She stayed true to herself as far as like being militant and conscious, but at the same time brought a feminine energy to it the way she could hold her own with guys. It was kind of like either one extreme or the next. They was either all sexualized or they were like borderline acting like dudes. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
So for her to fit in where she did, it was just like really important to make this album that much more of a landmark. So really being thankful about how we got to grow up listening to this. I mean, just solidifies her place to me.
Yeah, definitely. You think about where she came from, being after listening to the original Roxanne and the other versions of Roxanne, the Battle of the Roxannes in the mid 80s, heading into the late 80s. Her and MC Lyte sort of did something that never really had been done before. I mean, Roxanne Shante got her props as an MC during her time.
Right.
But I think really what Latifah did with her and MC Lyte sort of put them into the forefront. Like, all right, man, you guys could step on tracks with guys and hold your own. And it was important though with the Native Tongues movement, with her, Moni Love, along with the Jungle Brothers, De La Soul, and a Tribe Called Quest, about how important that movement was as it moved into the late 80s. It's almost like when you talk about like the Common song about I Used to Love Her, when he talked about how how hip hop went into its transitions, how they went into Afrocentricity and started talking about black empowerment and black love and everything else. And she was a part of that. And it was really, really important, though, really important point in hip hop. Dave, I'll ask you the same. I guess your impressions upon listening to the album and listening to this week, what you thought about it after all these years.
I have a confession. I didn't really get a chance to listen to it all the way through. I got to Wrath of My Madness. And I didn't really have to go any further than that because I enjoyed that track right there, and that was a remix. Of course, like Damo said, listening to Ladies First, that's a classic. And I like Dance For Me, too. I like the first track. It was dope.
Yeah.
But like I said, we all, like, me and you, me and Brian, and like 89 was like, we were 7 years old. My mom wasn't spinning no Queen Latifah.
Yeah.
I had to learn on stuff when I got a little older, but from what I did hear, I definitely enjoyed what I heard. And it was just something about that collective of the Native Tongues, the Jungle JBs and De La and Tribe, Moni Love. Nobody really knew who Moni Love was until Ladies First came out, or Buddy came out.
Yeah.
So it was good to hear, like, get her some exposure, you know what I'm saying? But all hail the Queen.
Yeah. No, it was to me, my perspective on this was props a lot to the production on here by not just DJ Mark, the 45 King, who is prominently mentioned throughout this record, but then also definitely work by Louis Vega, work by KRS-One and Daddy-O, and Prince Paul did some work on this album as well. At this point, Prince Paul had just come off of producing De La Soul's 3 Feet High and Rising, doing great work on there. But I was very struck by the tone of a lot of the lyrics here and the things that she was saying. Very pointed, especially in particular. We'll get to this when we talk about tracks that you listen to. To me, The Pros was an interesting track to me with Daddy-O, how they were talking about all right, in hip-hop, you got amateurs and then there's pros, and they were sort of talking about the state of the game even back then, that there were people back then that they didn't think were up to the level of MCing, which is really, really crazy because that was a big theme in the 80s. You had to bring it as an MC and have the respect of folks, man, and you could get mowed down at any particular point in time, man. Battling was really, really big back then.
The good old days.
They was ending careers back then.
Oh yeah, people's careers were being ended.
You losing a battle back then, your career was over.
Yeah,
Drake would have been done back then.
yeah.
UPS was hiring.
Him and Meek.
Ask a lot of the Juice Crew. They could tell you that. The Juice Crew pretty much went to a battle with BDP and was almost immediately struck to irrelevancy for a number of different years after that. So looking at the track listing, 12 tracks and then 3 on the bonus CD bonus afterwards, all remixes of everything else. We're going to go into basically your highlights of the album, any lowlights that you think you may had, and then also any tracks that you can appreciate more now that you wouldn't have appreciated back then. So we'll kind of go into all highlights, lowlights, and then tracks you could appreciate a little bit more now that you didn't back then. So I'll go ahead and I'll actually start with Dave. Dave, I know you spoke about Wrath of My Madness, so just any other highlights from what you listened to, and then basically any lowlights if there were any, and then something that you may appreciate more that you didn't appreciate that then.
Mama gave birth to the Soul Children.
Yeah.
I just like the vibe. You've got Queen batting lead off, then you've got Maceo, you've got True, and you've got
Paz.
Yeah, Paz. Like I always forget his name.
Paz, Dave. He goes by so many different names.
He's like so many names.
Plug one.
Like,
I mean,
yeah, but she's batting lead off, then the three of them, and then she closes it. That's like the perfect. That's how I think all guest tracks, or like you have somebody kind of collaborating. I think that's what it should be about. Have the guest in the middle of the track, do the second verse or whatever. But that's a highlight. Like I said, Ladies First and Wrath of My Madness, pretty dope.
yeah. Jay, your highlights, any lowlights, and then anything else that you appreciate more now than back then?
I have to say, of course, Ladies First. I mean, it was just an incredible track, and with it, introducing Moni Love, but giving her some more shine. But another thing with that is just fact, like, Moni Love was British, so who would have thought about a British MC, like, even back then? I mean, you have some now, like, that come out, but back in the 80s, that was like, it was barely heard of as somebody like, coming hard outside of New York, and for her to come hard outside, it being in Jersey, and then someone British, like, damn, she really brought it. I have to say, Wrath of My Madness, because the track is incredible, and of course, thinking from like a producer standpoint, that Walk On By, Isaac Hayes sample, I just loved it.
Yeah,
I forgot about that.
Yeah, like, you know what I mean. So, so I look at it in all aspects like that, and the pros, because I just honestly, personally, just love just the feeling of like a whack MC getting what's coming to him. I mean, just lights in my spirits. So,
no, of course. With Moni Love, when it came to, it was from the UK. It was Slick Rick and it was her.
Right.
Those are the only two, obviously, that jump out at you, and they were two very prominent figures during that particular point in time. Because who thinks about it at that time, thinking about any MCs from across the pond outside of New York, but let alone the country, being able to be that prominently featured. So yeah, it is. It's cool. And I love the fact, like you said, with the pros, and I love that beat, how it was down tempo. Because so much of the music back then, we were just talking about that, was up tempo. You got 95, 98, 100 BPM, and the beats are just moving because of the way that the flows were back then. This was a lot slower, and I really like the way that the beat sort of just rolled for a little bit. Damo, same with you. Highlights, lowlights, anything that you appreciated then that you might appreciate more now?
Well, I couldn't appreciate nothing then. But now I love Latifah's Law. Of course, Ladies First. Evil That Men Do. I listened to Evil That Men Do a couple of times because I was like, oh yeah, she getting her shit off on this one. I like Dance With Me too. It was definitely those, and of course, Evil That Men Do. I listened to that one a couple of times. That was one of, besides Ladies First, that I was rocking with.
For me, I like Dance With Me. For some reason, I like to Come Into My House because that had that sort of house feeling to it. And this is really when house was starting to make it was different. So let me say, it wasn't necessarily a highlight, but it was different. And the fact that house music was really starting to make its way into the mainstream in U.S. It was big in cities like Chicago and some places like New York. The house music was big. In Baltimore, it was big back then too as well. Wrath of My Madness, Latifah's Law was a good one. The pros, really, really great play between her and Daddy-O. Ladies First, and to really see her and Moni Love go back and forth on that with verses. It really was a great, really, really great interchange at that particular time. Evil That Men Do, which featured a very short, appearance from KRS-One. And I actually liked Inside Out too, which was the very last track on the album, the Inside Out track that was there. The mama gave birth to the soul children, like Dave was saying with De La. I think that title, though, it giving meaning to so much more, considering the fact that this is really the time where you had hip hop was really starting to make its movement into the soul part of hip hop, but really taking soul music and sampling soul records. And you had the group a la De La Soul being featured on this, hence the title being sort of a double entendre, being featured on this, and them being a part of the Native Tongues collective. I loved it. Loved everything about it. So those were really my highlights. I didn't really have a whole lot of lowlights on here. I think, though, that I definitely appreciate the pros a lot more now than I did back then, because it really speaks to the culture of things back then, especially when you think about what female MCs, and Latifah talked about that. Like, she talked about this on Latifah's Law, and also on Ladies First, about how guys would see a female MC and they would sort of underestimate her and think that she wouldn't be able to bring it on the track, and she definitely brought it, so that's what I would definitely have to say then, as I definitely appreciated the pros a lot more between then and now. Looking at that, and also switching now to, we are at the point where we go to any quotables that you all had. So we're in the point where we're at notable quotables, and there were a lot of them here. So if anybody wants to go ahead and pull quotables, we'll go ahead and go around to see about any notable quotables. I'll start with you, Dave, if you have any that in particular you wanted to point out.
I'm going to go with Moni Love's verse on Ladies First. Yo, praise me not for simply being what I am, born at London and sounding American. You dig exactly where I'm coming from. You want righteous rhyming, I'm going to give you some to enable and aid yourself and get paid in the materials that has no meaning I wish to slay. Pay me every bit of your attention like mother, like daughter. I would also like to mention, I wish for you to bring me to the rhythm of which is now systematically given. Desperately stressing I'm the daughter of a sister who's mother of a brother who's the brother of another. Mm-hmm. Plus one more, all four, we have a job to do. We doing it. Much respect due to the mother who's the root of it. And next up is me, the MONIELOVE. And I'm first because I'm an LIDIE. Like I said, it's Moni Love. I was talking about Buddy earlier. Like, that was my introduction to her. But for her to come out on Latifah's verse and just like, man, just murdered, just straight murdered.
Dig. Jay, any notable quotables on this one?
I have to highlight this song, the pros.
Mm-hmm.
Really could go with the whole song, but and I started to highlight, Daddy O's joint, but I'm just looking at Queen Latifah's her first, I don't know if it was like 8 or 16, but like she was like, I stepped to a basement party in Brooklyn. The brothers was looking. As soon as I put a foot in, a female walked up to me and said, Latifah, bust a line. I don't think that you on the strength. Show me the time. I said, if you really want to do this, we could do this fine. Take 6 paces and begin to rhyme. As soon as attempted to make a sound, I ate her up with the verb, broke her down with the noun. I hate it when someone challenges with me but cannot balance with me. I get annoyed when they can't go blow for blow. I get pissed when I hear the lyrics that a sucker brings. Mm-hmm. It's like, so pretty much like, I just had to highlight the fact that she just noted, like, I stepped to a party in Brooklyn, because like Brooklyn's like has this, even back then, like really had this reputation, like hip hop wise, and just being one of the more notorious boroughs in New York City. So to pretty much say like, I guess like the cast had attention to Brooklyn MCs. I mean, it just made them like that much more dangerous.
Oh yeah, so, definitely. Yeah. Damo, any notable quotables?
Latifah's Law.
Mm-hmm.
BMWs and gold rope chains don't impress me, or get you closer to the point you can undress me. Get skis, your nose will bleed. That's how they live life. People to feel the wrath of the giver of all life. Fire and desire make you get a little higher. When I grab the wire of the mic and get hype, I'm sorry you sound that, because I roll like the homicide squad. You must be broke and hoping that I'm soft, but I'm dope.
Yeah.
I was like, ooh.
Yeah, she definitely brought it with some lines on here, man. My quotable is on the pros. Her second verse, said, it's Latifah the Queen, pioneer of the mainstream. I flow just like a pro because it's the same thing. Suckers have to realize how foolish they sound. So button your lips, are trying to be down. I caught you out there how many times? A lot of times, because when it comes to mine, you know I got a rhyme. Stepping to the right, to the left, to the best place. Well, I have to face a sucker like a poo butt, weak and soft, right in my bra strap, trying to get off. Understand to know if you want to go, you better be ready to flow, because I'm a pro. So we talked about this thing as far as like when you step into a party, if you were going to step in and there was a battle going on, you better be ready to bring it, because there's a lot of witnesses there.
and that was before social media too.
Yeah.
So
but the word on the street, I even think back then was even worse, because it was like, you know, if you go to a party and there's like 20, 30 other party goers there and everybody's sitting around there, then let's listen, those 30 people, each one of those folks are going to tell 2 to 3 people on average. And if you got somebody with the big mouth, they're going to go tell everybody. So then the word's going to sort of get out there that it's like, yo, man, such and such, yo, Latifah stepped in here, Daddy Yo came in here, yo, destroyed cuz, or destroyed her, or destroyed him. And at that point in time, your reputation could be shot. Or if you don't have any sort of comeback from there, man, that's pretty much it, you know? So how in the world could you come back from that? So we talked about quotables. I think one of the big things that I like to look at when I look at old school albums like this is sort of look as far as like the culture, the competition. Now, she dropped this album right around the same time that MC Lyte was dropping Light as a Rock during 1989. Mm-hmm. And, you know, MC Lyte, with far in between, considered to be one of the best, not just female MCs, but best MCs, period. And it was sort of like between her and MC Lyte and Latifah as far as like the best MCs of the old school MCs back then. It was kind of like, you know, you had people that liked her, people that liked MC Lyte. They were both definitely dope. And it was really great to hear them collaborate later on in their careers, especially on that I Want to Be Down remix they had, where you had them, and then also one of the other dopest MCs that you heard, Yo-Yo, who was also on that as well from the West Coast.
Very underrated.
You know,
she scares me.
She does.
She underrated.
Yeah, props to the female MCs, especially the early pioneers, because, you know, a lot of them stepped out to do their thing, and to me, they kind of set the table for a lot of the ones that will come later. You heard MCs like Rod Digger and Lauryn Hill eventually later, and you heard people eventually like Jean Grey and Jane Blaze, and you also started to see a lot of these, you know, female MCs, Lil' Kim and Foxy Brown. You started to see. Now, eventually what happens is that you see her this in I Used to Love Her, is you saw that the female MCs started to definitely change as far as like the type of direction they were going, in terms of, you know, they were a lot more raunchy sexually, they're a lot more explicit. They were, and another thing that I noticed about this album, unless I missed it, there weren't any curse words in this album.
No,
you know,
it's not a single one.
You know, and so, you know, back then, that's another thing that we sort of talk about, like during that particular time in hip hop, is that back then you didn't see a whole lot of, you know, curse words and explicit lyrics back then. And during that particular time, it was only like during this time in 1989, 88, 89, you started seeing NWA really start to make some really explicit lyrics.
2 Live Crew.
Yeah, 2 Live Crew, of course. You know, you started seeing explicit lyrics in hip hop. And it sort of changes that from when you get to that point and you start to get out of the Latifah and MC Lyte era, you start to get to Yo-Yo, then you get to Lil' Kim and Foxy Brown, and then even with Rod Digger and Lauryn Hill, you started to get actually like, you know, explicit words in a lot of MCs, female MCs, and their how the moods really changed after this period. So it was great to start off with, though. So we're at that point where we make our verdict after all this time to see where it finally stands and see if it does stand the test of time. So I'm going to go around the table like we always do when we close things out here, is to find out, you know, does it stand the test of time? Is it borderline? Is it certified? Is it borderline? Or is it just in its time as far as being a classic? So I'll go ahead and I'll start with Damo, since you were the first one that mentioned to it that you kind of underestimated this album. So you underestimated it going in. Yeah. What do you think about it now?
Hey, I thought it was bona fide. And, you know, like I said, I went in with it thinking like, you know, because of the last couple of old albums we heard, I was like, oh, them Jones was classic for its time. So I'm sure this young about to be. And I underestimated her skills besides Ladies First, because that's the only thing I knew of from her back then, from being 6 years old. But certified.
Indeed. Jay, you?
I have to say a certified classic.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just too much that went into this album for it to be seen as anything else. But in my opinion, I mean, like I said, female MCs making that mark, and the content of her lyrics, especially at that time, and how everything that was still resonating today. I mean, so like I said, just all around classic in my opinion.
Indeed. Dave?
Classic.
Yeah.
I think it's groundbreaking,
Yeah.
especially for a female MC to come out where she was. And as you saw, this was just the beginning of her career.
Right.
So, she just said, okay, this is going to be the standard bearer. And I'm going to come out here, I'm going to wreck this I'm going to wreck this record. And she just blew up. So I consider this to be a classic.
It's certified to me. And to me, it opened the door. This was just started, her music career started opening the door to everything else that she did. The fact that she became an executive producer and produced a sitcom that became classic in that 90s era of that Fox Thursday night, that lineup on Thursday night with Martin and Living Single.
Yeah.
And, she created the template basically that became Friends.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, she did. She sure did.
Like somebody said that Living Single is the potato salad, your grandma's potato salad, and Friends is the potato salad with raisins in it.
I'm not going to say that. Miss Auntie potato salad who thinks it's better than your mom's. I'm not going to put raisins in girlfriends.
Nah, Friends is the potato salad with raisins in it. I have never been a big fan of Friends, and
You like Friends?
Most
I
black people
watch-
don't.
nah,
Yeah, be
man.
real.
I'm not really a big fan of Friends, man.
Sorry, most people looking like us don't really rock with Friends.
Yeah,
I mean, just the fact. How believable is it that they didn't come across no black folks in New York City? I mean,
yeah.
just saying.
Yeah, they had. What is the girl's name?
Well, Aisha Tyler.
Aisha Tyler.
Yeah, that was like
she was in like the last. She was like the last season.
I
She's
guess-
like the first black person introduced in the joint.
I mean, would they finally make up like Harlem or something?
Right.
Like,
Nah, they was living in Chelsea, man. They was living in the village, and that's what they were probably. You know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna say no comments behind that one.
But nah, man, it was great. And then now the things she's doing singing albums now. She was featured as Bessie Smith and the
Chicago.
Money Sellers. She was in Chicago. She's taking this thing and she's made it just beyond just rap. She's not just a rap pioneer.
And y'all forget
Talk
her.
shows,
Y'all
too.
forgetting her as Cleo.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and even then, like,
Who could forget that?
right? No, but even then, like with the acting, I mean, even though she was pretty much on Living Single and doing movies, I mean, she was still like coming with some like heat during that time.
Oh, yeah.
Like, on New Jersey Drive soundtrack, the Jersey joint, that joint was bumping. Like it was a joint on. I want to say it was on the Sunset Park soundtrack. Was the Elements?
Oh,
Mom
yeah.
and that-
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
yeah. I mean, so it's the fact.
She
like,
definitely
and
dropped it. Heat.
And that's not even to mention her collaboration with Rhapsody came out early this year.
Yeah.
yeah, like
She's still bringing it,
It's
man.
very rare to hear somebody outshine Rhapsody on an actual track, but
She did.
Queen did.
She definitely still doing her thing, man. She's still putting heaters out there, and she still as relevant today as she was back then. So that is going to wrap up yet another edition of The Vault. Please make sure you check us out on our host, Podbean, vaultcmr.podbean.com. You can also download, stream, and subscribe to The Vault CMR on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcasts. We appreciate all the support, and if you have a friend, tell a friend, and make sure you tell that friend to tell a friend. Also, if you're interested in doing a podcast, if you live in the DMV area, make sure you check out IV Creative on Facebook and also on Instagram. You can get us on Instagram at IVECRE8. You can also email us also at IVECRE8@gmail. Doesn't matter whether you're just getting started or you are looking to spice up your podcast and improve it a little bit. We work with everyone and would love to help you out with whatever it is you're looking to do with your podcast. As we leave, we always want to remind you to keep your headphones on and your music loud, but not too loud. And as we close, we like to remind everyone to dream big, because dreams are the basis for creation. Always create, motivate, and elevate, because you were never destined or created to stay stationary in this life. And on that note, we say peace.
Thank you for listening and coming into The Vault. Please subscribe and follow us on Facebook at IV Creative and Instagram at IVECRE8.